Good morning, and thank you to Biomin for inviting me. Usually I follow on from somebody talking about coccidiosis with all those wonderful photographs, etc., so they're pleased to hear me. But to follow on from a tiger and a dolphin, you now have to put up with a bee. So I will start first, as a bee has to talk about money, obviously. And I would just put in, I've been asked a few times what I think about corn. Well, I really don't know what the price of corn is going to be. If I did, I wouldn't be here, I would be rich. But I would like to just to show you what the present situation is costing us. So there's about 150 million broiler produced every day. So that means there's about 6,000 million broilers being raised at any one time. Each broiler eats about 100 grams of feed a day, and that usually contains about 60 grams of corn. So there's 360,000 metric tons of corn consumed every day. On the 29th of June, that corn cost us $46 million per day. And your challenge has just suddenly got a lot bigger. As from the day before yesterday, that $46 million a day has grown to $82 million a day, i.e. $36 million a day more. And I hope over the next couple of days, you will help to find solutions which will put a little bit of this back into our pockets. And the headlines of the last 24 hours in world poultry, the French poultry industry has informed the supermarkets they will be looking for a 15% price increase. And on the CNBC last night, Walmart has indicated there will be significant food inflation in 2011. But don't forget, the consumer is in a little bit of a precarious position, and I'm not sure if they will be able to put up with such rather large increases. So, where are we today? And how do we get here? And I think today's topic, expecting the unexpected, in the last decade, as I will show, we've done a lot of meeting the unexpected. So let's have a look at what is produced today by type of protein. So we talk a lot in percentages. I hate percentages. They don't give the true position. So between 1989 and 1999, there were 70 million tons of animal protein. And then in the next decade, another 62 million tons produced. But as I will show you, that decade has been very, very difficult. So the growth, 34% down to 22%. The overall position since 2005, and I've taken 2005 on purpose because we just had bird flu where we were going into the biofuels. The hogs in China has had problems, and there in 2008, 2009, we had the financial crisis, but poultry has been the winner by a long way. And in 2009, 2010, although the global picture is getting better, there are a lot of regional differences now. So pork has only grown because China's coming back and it grew by more than 3%. Broiler in the US, still only 1% this year, and in Brazil, over 4%. Population, and the chairman touched upon this morning, the population obviously slowing down, no secret to anybody, but I would like to hear is bad news for Brazil and Thailand. The two value markets for exports in the world are Japan and the EU. And in the next decade, neither of them grow or grow very little. The plus side for the global industry is that the Middle East population grows by twice the average, and that because of the religious issues, because of Islam, then that market for poultry will help us. So let's have a look where it is. So this is what I call the four giants: China, US, the EU, and Brazil. And they only have 35% of the population, but 65% of the production. And then you have the others. Now, the blue are countries which have over 5 million metric tons, and there's only 4 of them. And they're 22% of the population, 9% of the production. The red is over 2 million metric tons, and there's still only 17 of those. And then we have 157 countries which are classified as others. Now, as the chairman told us, we have 73 countries here represented. Assuming there's somebody here from each EU country, that means there's still 48 countries from outside of the EU. So a fair amount of you are in this 157 category. And for companies like Biomin and all suppliers to the industry, this is where, for me, the huge challenge is. One thing is to have, where, like in China, in Brazil, EU, you can have a very strong structure. How do you structure yourself not only to supply products, but to service them in those 157? China, it's nearly bigger than the sum of those other 3 giants. And as it has more hogs, probably the total of the animal feed in China is equal or greater than the sum of the other 3. And this will be a big topic when we look at the future tomorrow, and it was already raised this morning. Where will the ingredients come from for that huge market? Oh, let's have a look. That's where we are today. Let's have a look where we came from. How do we get here? And the last 2 decades we can split very clearly into 2. The easy 90s and the difficult first decade of the new millennium. And what a difference a day makes, and what a huge difference a decade makes. So in the 90s, most of the issues, the unexpected in the industry, we created for ourselves through better performance, and we got cheaper product out there, and we got that huge growth, although rather distorted by China with 114% growth and Brazil with 94%. In my banking days, every credit proposal came, we are growing at 7% a year, except that 7% a year was somewhere else in the world. So we had our first taste in the animal protein industry of the unexpected with the mad cow disease, huge disruption. And today, when you look at data, you really have to look at the world with China and without. In that period, they represented 70% of the global growth in pork. And actually, they grew more in beef than the world grew because Europe went backwards. And then in the broiler industry, China and Brazil, they accounted for around 40% of all the growth in the decade. So then we came to 2000. Our first unexpected came early on in 2002, and all the issues that I will bring up, in my view, it has changed the way that we've done business. It was not just a small change. No, it actually changed the way that we had to work. So our first problem hit very much Thailand and Brazil. We had a huge amount of our exports just sent back to us because of nitrofurans. And before that, China had had problems with residues. And Brazilian companies, they contested the testing procedures, but both Thailand and Brazil incurred large losses. And then we also suddenly realized that modern testing equipment is very, very precise and will find you out very, very quickly. So we got over that, and then we went slap bang into avian influenza. So first there was Chile and the Netherlands, and then in Canada. And I would like to say something here. I think only Chile has really stood up and dealt with bird flu in the best professional, ethical way possible. In Thailand, we will suffer for another decade because of the way that we went about it. So, Thailand and China, we were banned from exporting raw poultry, especially to the EU and Japan. And the main beneficiary has been our friends from Brazil. Although I do warn them that will not last forever. We have got our act together in Thailand, as I show, and we will get back into raw meat one day. And that was the unexpected. But both China and Thailand, they really faced up to this problem very quickly and got their cooked food industries up and going. And instead of just stopping and giving up, we basically started again. Another very positive thing that's come out of avian influenza, biosecurity practices globally have been radically strengthened. Okay, that's just what happened to the raw imports and the cooked imports. You see a great change. This today is a typical Thai broiler farm of major exporters. And not just one, there are quite a few. You don't get onto that broiler farm, it's, I would say, without following the same procedures that you would follow to get on a breeder farm in many parts of the world. I would say today that the Thai broiler grow-out is, if not the most biosecure, amongst the most biosecure in the world. Gone are the days of the photographs of farms over fish ponds, although people still show photographs. So we got over that. And then in 2006, at the State of the Union address, President Bush showed the mandated levels for ethanol. And now, already by 2010, about 30% of the corn production is destined for the fuel. And it's growing. Same time, many governments, especially here in Europe, set biodiesel targets, and this has put the pressure on the soy. There are alternative sources, and a lot of people are doing work on cellulose and algae, but so far there's no viable industrial scale production available. That unexpected has changed the economics of the animal protein forever. And as the chairman said this morning, maybe it will get worse. I hope it won't. Life costs on average increased about 30%. And the problem, as we've just seen from those, that $46 million extra a day of corn, the volatility has increased. There are 4 drivers to corn and soy. First, well, I will say them, but they're not necessarily in that order of importance. You've got the harvest, obviously. What does China do? China suddenly buys 3 or 4 boatloads, up goes the price. It is also the biofuel policies. And finally, when you start to get the volatility, all the commodity markets start to kick in, and that aggravates the problem. And now we seem to be in the middle of a crisis again. And to show you a little bit of what happens at the consumer end when you start to get from the biofuels or from the economic crisis, these are UK retail raw meat sales year on year from April 09 to April 08. And you will see there a huge increase in lamb. Now, if you are English, you might know why, but our cheapest meal is shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie is minced lamb with potatoes, i.e. the cheapest denominator. So what we did see, first, as the raw material went up and prices started to go up, people changed their habits. And there were 2 major changes. Stopped eating out, eat at home. So actually sales to retail were not so much heard. Food service sales, extremely heard. And then in people's home, they traded down. And it's not clear yet if everybody has gone back to where they were before the crisis. Yes, the corn growers and the soy, they increase production. And I know there are a couple in the audience, so I will be very careful what I say. But really the point of view of the farmers, if you give us the price, we can produce what you need. And as you see there, that the feed and the food part has more or less kept constant, and the green part is what has gone to fuel. So we got over that. All this, by the way, affected our bottom line considerably. And then we had the financial tsunami. And this challenge affected production and consumption levels of animal protein on a global scale more than all the prior unexpecteds combined. From 2008 to 2009, for the first time, meat production was flat, and for the first time in 50 years, global chicken consumption did not increase. Only pork's consumption in China increased as it was recovering from the disease and the earthquake and the weather issues of 2006. Here, just to give you an example, China lost around about 50 million hogs. Brazil, who's the fourth producer in the world, only produces 38. So you see, when there is a problem, an unexpected in China, it really affects all of us. And as I said, consumers traded down from more expensive cuts to affordable products, and we have not yet gone back to where we were, and we are already in another crisis. And one thing that we saw was when corn went up, and I will talk in dollars per metric ton, the consumers could take between $130 and $150 a ton. Where we are today is over 200. The consumers, and I'm talking about the global consumers, maybe most people in this room, if we have to pay a few cents more, doesn't hurt us too much. But don't forget, there are 40% of the world who live on well under $5 a day. Then, together with these unexpected events, we've had a huge increase in regulatory environment. We've seen animal welfare, biosecurity, environmental food safety standards far greater than in previous year. Restrictions, elimination of antibiotics. And the problem, besides local government standards, there are also importing country standards, and sometimes customers, for example, Tesco, who have their own standards, who raise the bar even higher. And then we have ISO, we have GMP, we have HACCP, we have BRC, we have ACP, we have everything, and these do add cost to the industry. But as my wife is an auditor, it helps my family incomes bottom line, so I have a conflict of interest here. But also, it's not all negative. One of the reasons today that Thailand has one of the best biosecure grow-outs is because of the introduction of the Assured Chicken Producing Program, ACP. The companies that have taken it seriously, they have improved their performance. Today, no longer in Thailand, do I have to mention Brazil as the benchmark. I can mention a certain company in Thailand as the benchmark, and we all have to. It's easier to talk to a Thai about Thailand or a Chinese person about China than it is to talk about somebody the other side of the world. Labor shortages. So in the USA, they get labor from Mexico and Asia. Here in Europe, from Eastern Europe and North Africa. In Thailand, we use people from Myanmar, Laos. In China, internal migration. And this is interesting because it causes long-term consequences. Many small cities in the US, the school population is majority Mexican. There is a city in Scotland where the majority of the school is of Polish origin. This starts to create issues. You are not sure whether you want your child basically to be brought up in an alien culture. And also, there's been a rapid increase in automation. I do help a company that's in the equipment for processing, and they've sold automated equipment in countries they never expected. It's nothing to do anymore with cost. It's availability of labor. And finally, the industry consolidation. So we have the big guys. Now, there are the leading animal protein companies in the world. And as a Brazilian by heart, I am very happy to see quite a few Brazilian companies in those top dozen. Now, the concentration, and this affects you here in the audience. So these 7 guys are over 17% of all the broiler production in the world. And when there's acquisitions, for example, Pilgrim's buying Goldkist, Marfrig buying Cargo, if you as a company are on the right side, it's wonderful. But I know cases where the company, for no fault of its own, was on the wrong side. And this can, as obviously with 17%, there could be quite a portion of your business in one of these companies, which you could literally lose overnight for no reason. And one of the key things that I do suggest to companies like Biomin, know where the decisions are. And that decision might not be where the organization chart indicates it is. So Tyson, it's taken 75 years to get where it is. It has about 100 plants in the US. Yes, it has operations in Brazil, quite small, in India, quite small, in China, quite small, and they are really learning how to operate. This is JBS. JBS today supply 20% of all McDonald's meat. And you see here, in 2006, they were about $2 billion a year. Now they are over 30. They slaughter 90,000 head of cattle a day, 7 million chickens in 37 plants, 49,000 head of pork. They are one of the largest leather producers in the world, and they are quite big in dairy. I do have a question how you apply one culture to 150, 160 plants around the world in virtually every continent. Marfrig, not too far behind. They've made 39 acquisitions in 3 years. And one of the problems of the analysts in the investment community is they keep on saying, we're not quite sure what we analyze because every time we get hold of it, it's moved on. This is the Marfrig production, and this does not include the latest Keystone. So it's 22,000 head of beef, 3 million chickens, 4,000 pork. So you've got a new reality out there. Both companies have very young CEOs, less than 40 years old. JBS is second generation. Marfrig, he founded this and built it up from nothing. And they've rewritten the rules on negotiation. We used to have a rule of thumb that an acquisition was like a pregnancy. It would take about 9 months from beginning to end. Now we're talking about weeks. And this, as I say, it can affect you as suppliers, that suddenly your market changes. So this is where we are today, and I think you will agree with me, we've had quite a lot of unexpected in the last decade. And then when we get on in tomorrow's panel sessions, I think we will be looking for what can we expect to be unexpected in the next decade. Thank you very much.